This episode of Engineering the Future is brought to you by National Bank, OSPE's official banking partner. National Bank's offer for engineers just got even better, now with exclusive access to virtual healthcare advisory and legal assistance services provided by its official partners. Find out more at nbc.ca/engineer.
This podcast is brought to you by OSPE, the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, the advocacy body for professional engineers in the engineering community in Ontario.
Welcome to Engineering the Future, a podcast presented by the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. I am your host, Jerome James. Today, I'm joined by Mary Wells, OSPE member, professional engineer, and Dean of the Faculty of Engineering at the University of Waterloo, as well as Sanjeev Gill, Associate Vice President of Innovation at Watspeed, the University of Waterloo's professional education program that is supporting the workforce of the future. Thanks for both of you being here today.
Thank you so much, Jerome. It's a real pleasure to be speaking to you tonight.
Excellent. So to start off with, Mary, how has education for engineers evolved over the years? How will it continue to change?
Well, I think that's a really great question, Jerome. And, something as an engineering leader and engineering educator I think about frequently. It consumes my thoughts a lot of the time. And, the whole history of Canadian Engineering Canada is interesting. Our first engineering program, I think, started in the 1850s. At what was called then King's College, which is now the University of New Brunswick. And then in the 1870s was followed by McGill and École Polytechnique, starting what they called back then applied science programs. Fast forward to today, and we have, 44 different institutions across the country with hundreds of different engineering programs, and we educate around 85,000 engineers each year. So it has gone through significant change, both to reflect the times, I think, at that moment in time, the things that were needed. And when I think about engineers, they're different than scientists because inherently we take scientific concepts, we take mathematical concepts, and we try to figure out how we can use those to help improve society, to improve life for people. So depending on what was needed at the moment in time, that was where engineering was focused. And I just want to say a couple of other comments, and then you can maybe probe me a little bit more in some areas. But it's always been a balance between what I would call theory and practice. Theory in the classroom and practice in the field as an engineering, and getting the balance right. And so when you look at how things have changed at some moments in time, I think we've erred too much on the scientific side, and so we've shifted more towards the practice side. But if I can give one example of which will be the University of Waterloo, of course, because I'm the dean there. That was a very innovative concept and disruptive, I would say, for engineering education. And I just want to speak about it because I think it speaks to this balance between theory and practice. The University of Waterloo started in 1957, and it wasn't started in a traditional way a university starts. It was started by people from industry. So they had a very different mindset. And they really felt that in order to produce very, very strong engineers, you really needed to balance that theory you learned in the classroom with the practice in the field. And this was through what at the time was a very, very revolutionary and different concept, co-op. Mm-hmm. And, I must say that the University of Toronto, McGill, these long-standing engineering programs were like, what is this co-op? This just sounds crazy to us. It'll really diminish what engineers we graduate. And in fact, we've seen the opposite. We see today that almost every engineering program has embraced co-op in one form or another. Some people call it internships, professional practice, but it's that balance between learning the theoretical knowledge in the classroom and then taking it out and applying it in real world engineering situations. And, so the students have that diversity of experience, that symbiotic relationship. They take that knowledge they've learned in the field, bring it back into the classroom. And so I think that's really one of the distinguishing changes that has happened in engineering and has influenced the kinds of engineering programs we have today and that balance between theory and practice.
Okay, so can we get into the weeds a bit here? What were we focusing on in the 1800s? What did we need engineering
in terms of the kind
for?
of engineering we were doing? I think a lot of it was around, we were a vast country, an underpopulated country, and I think part of it was around building the physical infrastructure that we needed at the time. Housing for a harsh climate, the railroad that would eventually, unite this country and things. And so things like that. So I think it was really focused on some of the physical infrastructure. So disciplines like civil engineering really were very, very important. I think there were some issues around military engineering as well in terms of some of the aspects that were needed. And so those were what was needed at the time. Again, if we fast forward to today, the types of disciplines we have are just so different. And when we think about the traditional disciplines of engineering, we've got things like civil engineering, mechanical engineering. I guess electrical engineering is a newer kind of discipline of engineering, but still a very traditional discipline of engineering, chemical engineering. But now we've got so many other disciplines of engineering that are really the interdisciplinary products of those traditional disciplinary engineering programs. So things like mechatronics engineering, which is now a combination of mechanical, electrical, and computer engineering. And really, if we think about it today, most of the devices that we have, for good or for bad, are mechatronic devices. So software tends to be embedded in everything we do, including the cars that we drive. And I actually heard an executive from GM referring to a car as a computer on wheels. So they no longer refer to it as a mechanical device, but really a computer on wheels. So, and we can think of biomedical engineering as another kind of interdisciplinary program that's become very popular.
How does the information age work into this? Data, technology, where do you see engineering education moving in that space?
I think that's a great question, Jerome. And we can see how, the use of computers, the use of data, the use of technology has influenced the disciplines of engineering, but also how we impart knowledge to students and teach our students. And so I would say that all disciplines of engineering now have some aspect of computer programming integrated into them, because this is the language that we use to speak to machines and to get machines to do what we want them to do. And that touches all the disciplines of engineering. So although at the very beginning, before this happened, before, I guess the revolution in computing and things, students wouldn't have learned these things. Today, it is one of the foundational subjects, I would say, in terms of providing a tool set that engineers can then go out and use. And I see that continuing into the future in terms of the future of digital technologies and how they will continue to change the profession of engineering, but also change the way that we interact with our students, both through the communications that we use, but also the tools that are available for engineers to use to help inform their decision making.
Great. Sanjeev, I want to bring you into this discussion here. What, for you, would you say is the most significant disruptive innovations affecting industry today? And how do you see its role in the impact for engineers and engineering in the future?
Yeah, so thanks for that question, Jerome. The first thing I would start with is I think an acknowledgement that technology and the world are not slowing down. So I like to follow Thomas Friedman quite a bit and have for a number of years. And I recall some time ago, I heard him speak about the rate of technology versus the human's ability to keep pace. And I think that there's a great chart, that shows the exponential curve of technology. And at some point in 2016, it was recognized that humans could no longer keep up with the rate and pace of technological change. So I think we can all agree technology is not going to slow down anytime soon. In fact, the World Economic Forum cited that 54% of employees will need to be reskilled or upskilled by 2022, which of course is just around the corner. I think also we need to recognize that the shelf life of knowledge keeps shrinking. And sort of what I mean by that is, if myself, someone, graduated from university 30 years ago or thereabouts, the knowledge that I acquired lasted me for a pretty good length of time. As you fast forward another decade, that shelf life just keeps on shrinking. 5 years later, even shorter and shorter. And as shelf life of knowledge shrinks, the gaps in skills, there's a mixed correlation there. Gaps in skills increase. But lifelong learning, without a doubt, Jerome, is the solution to closing skills gaps. We hear this from industry every day, where they are struggling with keeping their employees up to pace with the rate and pace of change, both in technology, but also in society. Today we are faced with a lot of societal fluctuations and shifts and changes. And so employees have to continually try to keep pace. If you think about the actual disruptive technologies, I would probably start with automation. Right. So roughly 36% of Canada's labor market is highly susceptible to automation. So think of manufacturing, mining, quarrying, oil and gas extraction are probably the highest from a susceptibility to automation. Next is advancements in AI and data science. I mean, without a doubt, machine learning elements are prevalent, not just within engineering corridors, quite frankly, or engineering job types, but across any sector. We're working with the field of accounting, so chartered accountants and predictive analytics. So, certainly advancements in AI and data science, without a doubt, are impacting every field, but moreover engineering than others. A shift to clean energy, so moving away from oil and gas, coal, other forms of renewable energy, rather. 5G is another great example. I think 5G has the potential of being incredibly disruptive, being able to take compute power, from a cloud or data center to the edge with 5G is going to revolutionize a number of different things in industry. And the way people think about their jobs, and in particular, I think engineers, insofar as where they're able to be mobile and be incredibly impactful with technologies like 5G. The next one, blockchain. So,
I was actually going to ask
the
you
use
about
of blockchain is being explored in almost every industry, not just finance any longer. And frankly, it's creating a pretty significant skills gap in our workforce. So I'll give you a good example, though, that really is meaningful. According to, if you look at ZipRecruiter, a blockchain developer earns about $154,000 on average starting salary, versus a software developer who earns on average starting salary of about $86,000. So, it's an emerging field that's disruptive. That's very interesting to those in the technology field. Cybersecurity and privacy. So you think about cyber threats are changing on a daily basis. New types of network intrusions, new methods of authentication, facial recognition. The news today was there and now potentially might be going away because of privacy implications. So I think Facebook announced today that they're going to remove 1 billion facial pictures off of Facebook because facial recognition has morphed from being something that was becoming so prevalent and ubiquitous to something that now threatens privacy. So cybersecurity and privacy is just an area that doesn't stand still. It requires constant upskilling. And I think one of the biggest emerging areas, Jerome, that we're going to see significant disruption in is quantum and quantum computing. Quantum is just in its infancy right now, but it's going to be a game changer. The banks are starting to be early adopters with things like crypto-based security as alternative methods to securing information. I think that is a massive field that certainly those in the engineering field are going to be considering as we move forward.
Since we're currently in the midst of, I believe it is COP26, we have an environmental crisis on our hands. How can disruptive innovation help these major shifts in the way that we look at technology and the environment?
Well, I think
Mary, do you want to jump in, or
sure? I'll just say something quick and then Sanjeev. We can go back and forth, Sanjeev. So I think you're absolutely right, Jerome. I think again, when we look at the forces at play right now that are influencing us, the climate crisis that we are finally recognizing and our governments are finally recognizing we're in is definitely one of those. And I think we already see many leaders coming forward, many people that give significant money saying, we need to do something. And so they're investing heavily. And, part of what will help us is technology and innovation, absolutely. And I think the whole green economy and finding ways to deal with the climate crisis we're in are absolutely. And, necessity is the mother of invention. So I am excited to see the kinds of things that we do as humans. Humans are just so ingenious in some ways, and so adaptable. But we really do need to focus on this. And, the young people recognize this. I look at Greta Thunberg.
Absolutely.
She, a 16-year-old that brings to the attention of the world with her voice what we need to do and what we need to focus our attentions on. And I think it's finally starting to happen. So I'm very pleased about this. And I hope we have the resilience to do it and the ingenuity to do it. And we have an obligation to each other and to our planet to take better care of it. So I do think we'll see a lot of change. And I think there will be a lot of focus of investment in this area. And, 5 years from now, we will be amazed at what we've been able to do. And we do have to do it in a responsible way so that we don't create other kind of side effects from what we're developing.
Exactly. Sanjeev, how can innovation help the climate crisis?
Well, I think if you believe in the data and the science, the terms often used, data is the new oil. I think another term I've heard is actually data is the new air. And climate change is ultimately going to be informed by data and the use of data and the use of devices like IoT devices that are measuring things with sensors, on agricultural equipment, for example, and able to offer so many insights. But the challenge, of course, is how do you leverage that data? What sort of modeling do you put on top of that data to do some predictive analytics? What sort of machine learning elements can you add to that data to enhance the outputs and decision making? So, without a doubt, innovation, technology, these ubiquitous devices that we have now and that can use to influence change are going to be huge for climate change. And what ultimately I think, decision makers and governments will hopefully take action based on what the data provides and predicts.
We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. At OSPE, we're here for you, making sure government, media, and the public are listening to the voice of engineers. You can learn more at ospe.on.ca.
Interesting. And Mary, just to elaborate on what Sanjeev was saying earlier, upskilling and reskilling is very important as technology continues to advance at an exponential rate. What are the current skill gaps, and what do you see as the next set of skill gaps as innovation continues to move into the future?
Yeah. Well, I'll say one brief comment, then I'm going to pass it over to Sanjeev because I would say he's more an expert in this than I am. But I do think we see, and I think Sanjeev touched on a little bit, in that referring to Thomas Friedman and how really the rapid pace of technology and changes that then trickle down into the way we do work, the way we live our lives, have are changing so rapidly that we've now really almost exceeded, or we have exceeded the ability of humans to adapt. So how do we either slow things down or allow our humans to catch up in some way? So I think there will be this whole area of lifelong learning is critical in terms of people starting their careers, finishing their degree, starting their careers, and then having opportunities to go back in to learn new skills, new technologies. I think the whole area of automation is one great example in terms of, if you think about what's happening in our industrial sector, in our manufacturing operations and things like this, the types of jobs people used to do have changed significantly. Robots are coming in now. The use of computers are coming in. How do we prepare people to be able to cope with that and to be able to feel like useful members of this workforce and things? So I definitely think there's going to be a huge need for it in the whole space of lifelong learning. But Sanjeev, I'm going to pass it over to you because I really do think you know much more about this and have looked at this much more than I have.
We touched a lot on this.
Sanjeev, what do you say about the planning for the future for engineers in their professional development? Like, do we need to legislate engineers go back to and take certain courses or change the way that the licensing structure works so that they need to prove that they're up to speed in a given field. How do you see that playing out in the short term?
So, Jerome, I'm going to try to address that. It's a bit of a multidimensional answer, I think. So, from my perspective, there's actually three things that we have to consider. One is the companies or firms that hire engineers, the engineering professionals themselves, and what are they doing to think about their own professional development, and then associations like OSPE. So I really think it's kind of a three-phased answer. So I'll start with an organization's perspective. I think, first of all, companies need to, first of all, understand where their industry is headed. They need to anticipate how technology will be impacting them. And then they need to go and develop a lifelong learning framework for skills development, ongoing skills development that aligns, again, to their business priorities. I can illustrate that a little bit when I say lifelong learning framework from my own personal experience. Before I came to the university, I was with IBM for a little over 20 years. And in those 2 decades, I was surrounded by engineers, electrical, software, systems, design, mechanical engineers over the course of my career at IBM. IBM spends an inordinate amount of focus on lifelong learning in a very positive way. And it's not just technology-based learning. So a lot of IBM's internal learning modules are based on their products and their services, but they also engage with institutions, with higher education, universities across the world to continually upgrade the skills of their workforce. You were required to have a minimum of 40 hours per year, depending upon how technical your role was. So most of our engineering communities who would be working in software development, for example, would be required to have up to 120 hours of ongoing education per year. And a lot of it was bleeding edge, remarkable education done in cooperation with some of the best institutions in the world, educational institutions in the world. So, but not every company has the resources or the size or scale of say an IBM. So I think it's critical. Right. It's critical for companies to engage with universities and colleges, deliver courses and programming that's targeted for their staff. Companies bring in the discipline and the experiential piece, and universities can bring in, obviously, the academic rigor and quality that's required to produce a really strong education. I think from an individual engineer's perspective, how do they plan for their own PD? So I think, one, understanding the impact of existing and emerging technologies, how those technologies could affect their current role in skills development and responsibilities. And then they need to plot out, what are the gaps and a learning path for themselves. I think it's critical for engineering professionals, especially those who've perhaps been out of school for a little while. So, we classify that as mid-career individuals, to really think about a PD plan that makes sense for them, for their lifestyle, their availability, their time. So what you'll see a lot is courses available for professionals, including engineers, that are in the 25 to 30 hour range. Think of it as 5 hours a week over 5 to 6 weeks. That's very consumable for the working professional to be able to allocate 5 hours a week over a period of weeks. And it's also enough time to have a meaningful amount of content that's actually going to make a difference to your career path. And I would say specifically for engineers, don't just stop at the hard skills. Think about the critical skills that you have to include, like leadership, change management, emotional intelligence, all incredibly important. When we speak with firms that hire engineers, they often tell us the engineering community is so fascinated with new technology, and that's what they want to learn, and that's what empowers them and excites them. But at the same time, those other critical skills are really, really important, especially in the kind of world that we're living in right now, which is, we're on screens with each other. How do you manage, technical deliverables in this sort of an environment? It's not something we've been doing until 2 years ago. And so there's a lot of these other types of skills that I think specifically for engineers need to begin adopting in addition to obviously the skills around technologies and emerging technologies, which are always very exciting. And then I think from an industry association perspective, because that's the third pillar of the stool, like OSPE, you represent tens of thousands of members in a shared profession, but all who are in different fields. So an industry association like OSPE has the best knowledge of skills gaps across multiple verticals. You have the ability to interview your members. You have the ability to survey employees and employers, and then take those insights and the understanding of skills gaps, work alongside university partners. So OSPE is doing this with Watspeed, the University of Waterloo. What we're going to be building will be coordinated with the Faculty of Engineering. So producing content that comes from deep expertise of where the world is going in technology, coupled with knowledge of the marketplace, knowledge of gaps, and industry verticals that an association brings to the table. And if you marry up the two, you can have very impactful education for professional engineers.
Excellent. Sanjeev, can you take a moment to plug Watspeed? Just give our listeners.
I thought you would never
exactly
ask.
what this program is all about.
He's good at this.
So one of the things, Jerome, that we recognized, Waterloo always, I would say we dabbled in professional development, but it was fairly generic professional development. And we thought long and hard about where are we right now as an institution at this point in time. Really based on this whole conversation is perfect because it's about the rate and pace at which technology is moving, and it's outpacing the workforce. So what should our university, given that we are a STEM-centric university in many regards, what uniquenesses could we bring to the professional workplace that we weren't already doing? So we dug deep and said, let's do something different and produce courses and education for the workforce. And we also we're targeting, I think those who are probably most susceptible. So mid-career folks who perhaps have been out of technology for a little while and need to ramp up in order to be able to keep up. And so that's where we formed Watspeed. And, the Watt, by the way, is Waterloo. And speed really denotes the sense that the world is moving quick and people need to upskill themselves in a fast way. Not everyone can go back, say, for a master's program for 2 years. Maybe there are better ways by which to continually upskill people in a fast-paced moving environment. And so we created Watspeed. And one of the things we found, Jerome, that was interesting was this partnership with industry associations and corporations is absolutely critical. So a little earlier to what I said, I'll just kind of reiterate. We are learning so much about skills gaps in conversations with organizations like OSPE, and with some others that we're working with right now about what their members need and what people are looking for. And then we go off and we figure out, hey, do we have a unique value proposition around a technology? What if we coupled it with sustainability? What if we coupled technology with EDI or ESG and brought a combined offering to the table? And the feedback we get is that would be phenomenal, because while technology leads and what folks are interested in, specifically engineers, if you bring in those other elements, it really makes for a set of skills offerings that, quite honestly, no one in the marketplace is addressing right now.
And try to bring everyone up to Watspeed.
You got it.
I like it.
Absolutely.
It's great. I'm from the KW area as well, so that's great.
Oh, that's great.
Mary, can you tell us a little bit about the Faculty of Engineering at Waterloo and some of the difficulties and hardships from the COVID perspective, bringing students back to class this year, and where you see things kind of leveling off in the near future?
Yeah, so, well, just a little bit about the Faculty of Engineering at the University of Waterloo. It is the largest engineering program in the country in terms of the number of graduates that we produce. It's one of the top in the world. So it's in I think it's number 40 in the entire world, which is it's really an exceptional outcome from my perspective, because it's such a young program. It started in 1957. To achieve that kind of stature in a publicly funded education system is just really amazing. I think it speaks to the type of students that we attract to our programs, but also the kind of experience they get, and then the amazing things that they go off and do. I think one of the unique features of the program is the focus on entrepreneurship and innovation. And that's really rooted in the fact that right from inception, because it was, kind of designed or envisioned by industry, they, created this very unusual policy around creator-owned IP. And so, because everybody owns their own IP, it really motivates people, both our faculty, our staff, but also our students, to really think about what are those really creative ideas that can lead to a future enterprise. And so it's part of the culture that's there too. So in terms of COVID,
Great.
as like everywhere else across the country, it's just been so difficult for our students. And I think one of the things that's shown to me, and I have some teenagers as well, is that, the inequities in our society, those people that were, our students that had, brothers and sisters at home or trying to learn online in a crowded house with lots of noise. It was just almost impossible conditions to study in. They could never leave. They couldn't go to the library. Engineering is a demanding program. You're an engineer, I think, Jerome. You would remember back to those days of, multiple hours of study every night. You need quiet study to be able to succeed in the program. So it's just been so difficult for the students. I must say I was so proud of the faculty and staff, not in our faculty, but across the university and across all the universities, at how they adapted to help the students. At first we put everything online, not knowing much because we hadn't done it before, but then we learned fairly quickly and adapted to figure out what could work with the students in terms of helping them to learn, considering the conditions many of them were in, how we could assess them in terms of the knowledge they were gaining, how could we give them those experiences of collaborating with each other and things, and really came up with some very innovative ways of teaching them and getting them to interact with each other. So the good news is that we are coming back to campus. We have many classes in person this term, and in winter 2022, we're planning for a fully in-person term for all of our students, and all of our faculty and staff are returning to campus. It started to happen over this term, but we'll be fully 100% back starting in January. And I must say, we are so excited about it. The faculty are excited about it, the staff are excited about it, and I know the students are really excited about it and just so appreciative of having the learning experience in person. That's one thing. The gratitude I see from the students is really remarkable. So,
I can imagine. One last question for you, Mary.
Sure.
Can you tell us why you are an OSPE member?
So, I've chosen to be an OSPE member for a number of reasons. I think number one, I think they're a wonderful voice for the engineering profession. They're a community of peers. And the way that they're able to amplify the voices of engineers, I just think is wonderful. Engineers, the stereotype of engineers is they're a little bit more introverted, a little bit more quiet. And I actually think it's true because we don't tend to see the engineering voice in the public media very much, despite the fact they have many things to offer. So to have OSPE help us amplify our voice and help be the conduit of the engineering viewpoint on different matters is just so critical. So that's one thing I love about OSPE. The other thing I really love about OSPE is their advocacy role. Their advocacy role for engineers, but their advocacy role and the profile they create around who engineers are, what they do, how they help to make the world a better place. Again, if you think about kids that are thinking about coming into engineering, we still find that most people, in fact, don't know what engineers do. Or anything like that. Now, what I've always found interesting, and these are highly intelligent people that are making kind of a leap of faith to go into a profession they don't know much about. And because somebody might have said, you'll be good at engineering, or somewhere they've read, it'll be an okay career. But I think OSPE really helps to bridge that gap by some of the outreach they do to youth and to the general public about who engineers are and what they do in the world. And so that's something else that I'm very proud of. So I think it's a wonderful organization, and I think they do a lot of great work for our engineering profession.
Great. That was an excellent answer to that question.
Okay.
Thank you
thanks,
so
Jerome.
much, both of you. I feel like I've learned so much about innovation and the future of engineering education and society's future in general today. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. And yeah, it's been a blast.
Thanks, Jerome. Great time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Jerome. It was great speaking to you.
I've been speaking with Mary Wells, OSPE member and Dean of the Faculty of Engineering at Waterloo, and Sanjeev Gill, Associate Vice President of Innovation at Watspeed. And I'm your host, Jerome James, and you've been listening to yet another episode of Engineering the Future.
From all of us at OSPE, the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, thanks for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.